This is, as the name indicates, 3 books in one: The War for America's Soul, America the Last Days, and Spiritual War Trumps Everything. The Trump Trilogy is available in an ebook edition, of course, and also in a paperback and audiobook edition. But let's take a look here with the book preview at what this book is all about. I'm going to jump forward through the table of contents to the preface. You and I have just lived through an epic day in American history. If I may make some comparisons and pontificate with some hyperbole, I'm thinking of the volcanic eruption of Krakatoa in 1883 that was heard 3,000 kilometers away, the loudest explosion known in world history. I'm also thinking of the 1964 9.2 magnitude Alaska earthquake, because I lived 340 miles from the epicenter. If you live in the South, perhaps you'll think of Hurricane Katrina in 2005. These natural disasters changed a lot of lives. Of course, the major event on my mind is the landslide victory that elected Donald J. Trump the 47th President of the United States. Granted, this is not in the nature of a natural disaster, but it was an act of God, if we are to believe Romans 13:1, and its impact will go down as one of history's epic events that changed the world forever. President Trump's second term as president is almost certainly going to have greater long-term consequences for the world's population than any of the massive natural disasters mentioned above. Granted, natural disasters took lives and robbed people of their worldly possessions. Krakatoa officially killed 36,000 people, and the Alaska earthquake killed 136 people. By comparison, the second term of Donald Trump will forever impact millions of lives in America and billions around the world. The world is about to experience a cataclysmic upheaval that will realign nations. Never before has a single election held the power to disrupt and shape the fate of billions across every nation on earth. Never has there been such a black and white contrast between good and evil exposed in the American government, a truly demonic agenda of a political party that captured and enslaved a nation for as long as the Democratic Party did in America. In real time, we are watching a nation get dramatically saved from the clutches of darkness with the single election of a president and his appointees. No one would claim that Donald Trump is Jesus Christ, or that he is a better communicator than President John F. Kennedy or Ronald Reagan. He is just a man. But great men throughout history whose legacy changed the world were also just men. It only takes an ordinary man to accomplish extraordinary things if God appoints that man at the right time and place. This book will prove why this election and this man have unprecedented power to turn America around so dramatically. It will take 3 books to prove this, and that's why this is a trilogy. The War for America's Soul will articulate how we got to this place, where Americans are no longer free, but are enslaved to massive government power and a deep and dark network of institutions, corporations, and media. America in the Last Days will carefully demonstrate why we are so close to the precipice of total annihilation by evil. And Spiritual War Trumps Everything will not avoid the spiritual realm and biblical prophecy as other books about America do, but details exactly what the Bible says about these times we live in and how America does or does not play a role. We just crossed the tipping point, and there is no going back. Are you ready for what is to come? Do you understand the precarious nature of America's future? Do you understand what this means for your future and your children's future? This election result is the equivalent of the perfect storm, as multiple events and people in history come together like never before to create a devastating force against the darkness that has gripped our land. Unlike the movie in which George Clooney could not turn the boat around and get out of the darkness, will President Trump be able to turn America around? Join me in a careful review of how we got here and the journey we are now embarking on with our 47th president. May God protect and guide President Donald J. Trump. And we start with the first book, The War for America's Soul, The Deep State. The war for America's soul is a battle for the truth. It always has been. I'm not speaking metaphorically here. Literally, the battle is for the truth, and it has been from the beginning. With all that is going on in the world today to take down America and consolidate control by the ruling elite worldwide, this book could not be more relevant. It was a lie that destroyed a perfect world and began the long, painful fall of all of mankind. The battle for the truth started in the Garden of Eden when Lucifer lied to Eve. Then Eve got Adam to accept the lie. And when God confronted him, Adam blamed Eve. Adam even blamed God to God's face when he said, "The woman you gave me is the one who caused me to sin." Fast forward the clock thousands of years. In America today, we see an intense battle for the truth, and we see how lies, distortions, and misrepresentations dominate the discourse in America. America is being ripped apart by lies. The battle for the truth is raging, and it rages in every corner of America on every subject and in every organization. It is personified by our own executive and legislative branches of government. The U.S. House and Senate are embarrassing institutions where lies dominate everything they do. The most powerful political body in the history of the world has become a laughingstock of lies and deception to the entire world. This book explains precisely how America got to this point, who brought us to this place, and what we can do to fight for the truth and stand against the lies. This is an extremely practical book with real answers for the biggest problems America faces. Not only do I discuss political history that reveals how we got here, but I also include the wisdom of the ages, which is too often left out of the conversation entirely. What is that wisdom of the ages? It is the wisdom of God found in the Bible. It is no coincidence that Donald Trump coined the phrase fake news, which has changed the entire landscape of false news and the issue of censorship. It is also no coincidence that this is the first president to proclaim that God is in charge, that Christians must and will have religious freedom and freedom of speech, and that it was God who saved his life in order to become the 47th president. We were created to be free. The desire to be free and to live free is at the core of who every human being is. Our hearts beat and our minds are excited out of a need to be creatively free and independent. Freedom is the driving force that makes us human and alive and productive. The exercise of freedom by honest and hardworking people is a powerful force for good. This is the reason the United States became the greatest nation in the history of the world. We started as desperate people, escaping slavery and running from governments that crushed freedom, infringed on the right to privacy, demeaned humanity, controlled religion, and deprived citizens of the right to own guns for self-defense. We escaped England, France, Germany, and Spain, seeking freedom, and we found it in America. The early settlers had little more than the clothing on their backs, but they were willing to work hard, to be creative, and to risk everything for the sake of freedom. They had no safe haven when they came to America. They faced uncertainty, dangers, and death, but they treasured freedom above all else. And they hated slavery, especially the kind fostered by self-serving politicians building government power. As a result, America became the greatest free nation on earth. And for 2 centuries, the power of individual pursuits built the greatest economy, the best inventions, and the most productive free people of any nation in the world. Even our own advanced military technologies are the result of the ingenuity of individual American inventors and private industry that contracted with the government. The U.S. government uses our tax dollars to buy the knowledge and equipment. The idea that we were created to be free is not just a philosophical leaning. It is a spiritual truth. It is the way God created us. God abhors slavery, and he loves freedom. Some have called free enterprise God's economic system. If God had an economic system, it would be perfect, and free enterprise is not perfect. A man-made economic system of any kind will always fall short of a perfect system, but the free enterprise system created in America is the closest thing on earth to God's economic system. This will infuriate Democrats, and it will entertain Republicans, but neither seem to understand the foundational importance of freedom in an economic and political system for every single human being. Talking points rule the discussions, and shallow debates between the political elite have captured the attention of the nation, but the discussions avoid an emphasis on the most fundamental of all human needs, the need to be free. No people in history have ever said, "We want to be enslaved," or "We want to suffer under the hands of a cruel government." But they have said, "We want a king," and then suffered death and torture under his rule. They have said, "We yield to royalty, never mind the dark dungeons and the witch hunts fostered by the religious leaders of the day." All over the world they have said, "We bow down to a cruel dictator," and then suffered terribly for generations. They have said, "We willingly submit to a president, and we give him and the senators and congressmen authority to rule over us," and then suffered the loss of precious liberties. Throughout history, the people could have stopped the king's murderous rule. They could have stopped the abuses of dictators, and they could have stopped liberalism in its tracks. But they did not. Until the founders of America left England to start a new country. Even then, so determined were the liberals of England to expand government power over the people, they attacked us across an ocean. The greed and reach of government always tends toward expansion and control. The naive assumption by many Americans that a government is basically good goes against every example of every government in world history. No government has ever proven it is altruistic, self-sacrificing, loving, and generous to all its people. Not one. No government has proven it is all-wise. Not one. Government stands against personal freedom by definition. Governments do not set people free, they enslave them. We were not created to be enslaved. We were created to be free. Every fiber of our humanity screams out, "I want to be free." Yet this is not the topic of conversation today. Americans have been distracted by talking points, radical ideologies, and intellectual debates. Americans have lost their way. While they would acknowledge they do not want to be slaves, they consistently yield to government power and domination over their lives. In other words, while Americans claim to want to be free, they keep choosing the path to slavery. When you make a wrong choice, even if you don't know it was a wrong choice at the time, later it begins to feel wrong. And as time passes, it feels more and more wrong. Throughout history, people have been short-sighted when it came to their rulers and elected leaders. Only after they lost most of their freedom and realized that their children and grandchildren were going to live in slavery did they begin to even ask questions about their leadership. By then, it's too late, as I'll explain in the chapter entitled, "Why There Is No Turning Back." I think you'll enjoy the Trump Trilogy, and if you do, please let us know by leaving your comments. Of course, you can purchase it right here on booksonline.club. I'm Chuck Marundi, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.